from the first time I drank ayahuasca, um, I started serving people on my own after about 3.5 to 4 years of training.
Wow.
And that was an accelerated training. But then I continued training for another 11, 12 years beyond that. I trained consistently for about 14 years. It takes a lot of dedication and also some skill to learn how to wield the medicine.
And I'm guessing that when you were growing up in California, you didn't have dreams of becoming a medico vegetalista or a shaman.
No,
um,
no, that wasn't even in the purview of possibility.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to yet another episode of Love, Loss, and Hallucinations, where we start with those three themes and see where the conversation takes us. Today's guest I first met in the Amazon jungle of Peru in 2006. Today I have Maestro Hamilton Souther. I just asked you how to pronounce your last name, and I just messed it up again. So Souther, right?
Something, yeah.
Yeah. His work has been featured in Time, the New York Times, National Geographic, The Washington Post, NPR, and Oprah Daily. He is a pioneer of the psychedelic renaissance, including being the founder of Blue Morpho in Peru, where for over 23 years he has led more than 15,000 individuals through transformative plant medicine ceremonies. Hamilton is a trained anthropologist and graduate of the University of Colorado Boulder, and he apprenticed in the deep Amazon forest back in the day under Don Julio, and I'm going to want you to help me to pronounce his name correctly out of respect. How do you say his full name?
Don Julio Llerena Pinedo.
I would have massacred that. Yes, so thank you for that, Hamilton. And Hamilton has since, as under his Don Julio's training, he became the first Westerner ever recognized as a Maestro Medico Vegetalista. There we go. Got it out of my mouth. Welcome to the show, Hamilton. It's great to see you. It's been a couple of years.
It has. Great to see you too, Scott. Glad to be here today. Yeah.
Yeah. Excited for our discussion. I'm sure it's going to be interesting. And Hamilton is actually joining us from the lodge where I first went and did my first plant medicine ceremony of any kind back in, as I said, 2006. So it's just taking me back, just seeing the netting behind your head and the jungle behind that. So there's been a lot of ceremonies there, no doubt. But to get started, obviously there's a lot more people today who know about ayahuasca than when we first met in 2006. But there's still a ton, probably millions, that I still come across people in my day-to-day life. They're like, what? What the heck is that? So I guess just to get started, let's just maybe spend a couple minutes like kind of on the basics. Like, first, what is ayahuasca and why would someone want to drink it?
Ayahuasca is a potent medicinal plant in the Amazon that is prepared as a tea. And it's a mixture of a variety of plants. The two principal plants are the vine of ayahuasca itself, Banisteriopsis caapi, and the leaves of the chacruna tree, which is known as Psychotra vidris. And someone would drink this one, it's because it's a very effective plant medicine and has been used for thousands of years in the Amazon. And it's an incredible plant for healing psychological issues and psychosomatic ones, and then ultimately what are described down here as spiritual issues where the effects of life have been somehow dampening or decreasing of your vibrancy and your life force and your overall well-being. And that's described as a spiritual condition here. And I think in the West, we would think of it as the effects of trauma, the effects of, PTSD, and ultimately what leads to the symptoms of depression. And so it's an incredible medicine for that. And then as more people started to work with it, it was also discovered to be very powerful at supporting people in transcending addiction of all different kinds, from substance abuse addictions to just behavioral addictions, which we know are now more prevalent than ever. And finally, it has been used as well as a form of spiritual growth and development, spiritual mastery, and a powerful tool for personal transformation. And so,
Absolutely.
as you go through that process of personally transforming and growing, often you run into a kind of personal level of healing that you go through. And so they work in lockstep together. And those are all the reasons that people participate with this medicine.
Yes, definitely. I mean, I I'm just to be upfront. I'm not going to talk too much about my experience down there in 2006 because we're going to hold off and have Hamilton back whenever my memoir comes out, and we're going to get all nostalgic then. I do have one picture I'm going to pull up that I will post on like Instagram of us back in the day, uh, and I'll show it to Hamilton here on the screen.
Amazing.
A little younger there.
A lot younger. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, I mean, I went down there, as I said, I'd never done any sort of hallucinogenic or psychedelic or plant medicine. And I was going through a rough time in my life, separated from my wife, lost in who I was. And like I said, we're going to talk about that in the future. Um, but I will just say it, it saved our marriage, basically. Uh, saved me, saved our marriage. Um, Having said that, want to get back a little bit to the basics about when someone calls you a maestro medico vegetalista or curandero or shaman. Uh, are there differences there? Is there one you should be called versus over the other?
Uh, Nature of the
Mm,
titles down here, if you come into this culture and you will be titled within the culture, you'll be called a maestro. And what you're a maestro of is being a medico vegetalista. So there are medico vegetalistas who are not maestros. They're of a different level of expertise and capacity. And then there are those that have reached a certain level that throughout the lineages ultimately were codified into a title and a recognition.
mhm,
And so it's called a maestro medico vegetalista. And medico is translated in Spanish meaning doctor, and vegetalista means of the plants. And
mhm,
a maestro just is a level of distinction of that level of training. And then it gets broken down into the specialties that you work with. Some work with trees and medicinal trees, others work in uh, different kinds of poultices and tinctures and things like that. And then there are those that are focused on the visionary plants and the visionary arts associated with those plants. And that's where you see, people who specialize in ayahuasca, etc. And so that's the nature of it. The Westerners brought the word shaman.
right.
The word shaman wasn't a word that was indigenous to here, and it really comes from Siberia, and it means somebody who
Mhm,
goes into an altered state and comes back into uh, a normal state with some kind of value to the society or to the tribe or to an individual. And it just turned out that there were societies, all tribal or indigenous societies all over the world, where there were people that would access altered states as a means of gaining information and or performing healing, and having there be a certain level of efficacy associated with that, and that being enculturated. And so I think the word shaman is brought here because of the nature of the people working with visionary plants and going into a state of trance, and in doing so performing the healing arts. But it is important to recognize that that's not a locally used word.
right, right. I agree. And I just want to recognize, as you said earlier, both with ayahuasca and shamans being found all around the world, that this sort of healing has been going on for thousands of years. There was a pouch found in Bolivia that had ayahuasca in it that was over 1,000 years old. So
Hmm.
this is, people have been working with this medicine for generations and generations. And um, before we get too much deeper into like the experience and perhaps experiences you've had. I just want to also put out there that Um, you know, for some people listening, some of the stories that we might get to talk about might sound out there and like, what in the world are these people talking about? And there's no way that's real. And, in my head, I sort of come up with this comparison or metaphor for it where um, long range, this isn't the greatest metaphor because of like the death and destruction that followed, but think of the explorers in the late 1400s and 1500s coming to the Americas, experiencing all sorts of crazy animals and different people and all sorts of new realities that they took back and talked about to Europeans. And I'm sure many of those Europeans were like, what in the world are you saying? There's no way that's real. But um, that's sort of when we get into talking about ayahuasca and having these visionary experiences. To me, it's a similar situation because oftentimes when you're in these places, they and having these experiences with plant medicine and especially ayahuasca, it feels more real than me sitting here talking to Hamilton.
The nature of a visionary experience is not meant to be compared back to what we would think of as physical, ordinary reality. And, people will share the stories of their dreams, which can be fantasy oriented and sci fi. And as long as it's encapsulated in an awareness of a dream, it can be accepted in that way. And I feel the same about the visions. There's a realism associated with them that people experience, but they're not meant to be compared back to ordinary reality. And I asked and have since the beginning of my practice to understand the importance of those visions and what kind of support or positive transformation they ultimately lead to. And over the years, we've seen that while I think the genres that most encapsulate these visionary experiences is science fiction and fantasy and things like that, ultimately they have great purpose for the participants in overcoming the illness or the blockage or the difficulty that they're having.
Yeah, absolutely. And like really respecting them and sitting with them and allow them to work you even after the main experience is done and you know being open to what they're trying to tell you. And I also want to just point out, I appreciate that, you know, obviously this podcast is called Love, Loss, and Hallucinations, but in the plant medicine, and particularly when I was first came down and experienced ayahuasca, immediately you guys were talking about visions versus hallucinations, which I
Yes.
think is a much more accurate term. Just because hallucinations, it's catchy and it sort of has a certain connotation that, oh, that didn't really happen, that was fake. Um, Whereas, a vision I think is much more reflective of the actual experience.
I think of them as visionary medicines. I don't even
Hmm.
consider ayahuasca a hallucinogen, although people will
Mm,
hallucinate when they're on it. We think of the difference between moving into a hallucination and into a vision is that visions occur when you've learned how to sit and stabilize your consciousness and your awareness, very much like a meditator, and you've learned to
mhm.
sync your senses. And so it requires a bit of training and awareness and understanding how to be able to create that state. And, then this really incredible experience of vision turns on for participants. And early on, I didn't know if, people coming here would have visions. Is that even
Mm.
possible that somebody could fly down to South America and jump in a ceremony and have visions? And lo and behold, most of everybody that ever came through our center reports having a kind of visionary experience. So, happy
I
to talk about
definitely
that along the way.
I definitely had a very visionary experience, so multiple. Um, and I'm wondering, like, okay, so just kind of condensing, you were kind of called down there, um, after I think you had learned about ayahuasca maybe in your studies and that sort of thing. Um, and once you came down there and found a teacher, uh, how long was your training until you were able to like have the knowledge and be bestowed the honor of serving other people and guiding ceremonies?
Yeah, it's from the first time I drank ayahuasca, um, I started serving people on my own after about 3.5 to 4 years of training,
Wow.
and that was an accelerated training, but then I continued training for another 11, 12 years beyond that. I trained consistently for about 14 years. And so
Mm.
I was given this opportunity to serve. It's based on merit. You go through extensive rites of passage and final tests of capacity to be allowed to, serve inside our lineage. And so but there isn't a set duration for that. It's, always more than a couple years, and it could be as long as 10 or 15 years for somebody to, ultimately learn what they need to. It takes a lot of, dedication and also some skill to learn how to wield the medicine.
Yeah. And I'm guessing that when you were growing up in California, you didn't have dreams of becoming a medico vegetalista or a shaman.
No,
um,
no, that wasn't even in the purview of possibility. I dreamt of, being involved in international business and athletics, and I
I
loved
remember you
playing
were a
golf.
golfer.
I
If
did,
I,
I loved playing golf. Yeah, I still think it's a great game.
yeah, yeah. So once you got down to the Amazon, and started to just, you realized that you were going forward with this, and I know, uh, that even really committing to it, there's obviously some challenge and, self-doubt you had to let go of, but I'm wondering, what really pushed you through that door, and what, if anything, of your previous ego did you have to lose to go forward? Pardon the short interruption, but I wanted to let you know that after Hamilton and I recorded this episode, he and his team reached out with a pretty cool offer, one that's meant for any of you listening out there who are drawn to work with plant medicines and psychedelics for, whatever the reason. Hamilton is offering his plant medicine training course to all of you, my listeners, for $1,000 off its normal price. Well, that's pretty awesome. Perhaps you want to learn about medicines for yourself, or you eventually want to hold ceremonies as a sitter, or maybe you already have training, but you want to enhance it, your own knowledge through different lineages and that sort of thing. If so, you should check this out, especially if you are interested in working with ayahuasca or psilocybin, San Pedro, or cannabis. And Hamilton also wanted me to let you know that this course includes a ton of extra bonus material and guidance, like thousands of dollars worth. And the initial trainings are online, so you don't have to travel to the Amazon for this. Although, honestly, from my own time there, that's a whole amazing experience too. If you're interested, you should check it out at bluemorpho.org/plant-medicine-training. And I will put that link in the show notes as well. Now back to our conversation. What, if anything, of your previous ego did you have to lose to go forward?
When you go through training, you lose most of the ego that you had
Mm,
previously. It gets there's lots of maybe a good word for it is softened. You get
mm,
softened by the experience. It's meant to the training is meant to support you in being able to be a leader and a guide for the people that you support and help, and also
hmm
understand how to be able to heal them. And you have to be strong within yourself, but you also have to be humble and aware of your place in all of this, and in the greater context, in the context of your life, and in the context of the cosmos. And so you go through a lot of letting go of ego along the way. You also go through a lot of suffering. You suffer hunger and different times of great restriction in diet. You also have great tests of strength and virtue that's required of you in the forest, your physical capacities and abilities to survive and live off the land. And then you have to represent a great connection with nature, which has a inherent and an inherent capacity to help you transcend aspects of your own individualization and concepts of ego. And then, the resistances come just from, I think, a tremendous amount of doubt and fear that
Yeah.
you have to learn to process. And I think that that's just a natural part of our psyche, especially coming from Western developed societies. There's just a lot of doubt and fear,
Mm.
how to navigate them, and very few paths that would be considered traditional paths to success.
About the fear, I've read the 2 books that you put out. They sort of really describe your experience, and you talk a lot about fear in there. And for you, I'm curious, like, what was that fear? Like, what sort of fears were you dealing with and having to overcome?
I think for me, fear, is an inherent or innate capacity we have, and you can get really good at different kinds of fear. So I had existential concerns. I had, personal survival concerns. I had doubts and worries about whether I was even capable of learning this kind of practice in medicine. Um, I had fears over, how we would survive economically going forward
Mm,
in our lives, fears about, learning how to even live off the land. And then there were lots of fears about the questionable understanding from a legal perspective. In lots of
mm.
places in the world, the plants are not considered legal, and few places they are. So there's constant legal concern about how to navigate this correctly and appropriately with our societies. And so I had lots of fears along the way.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's and yeah, as you said, as a pioneer, you had to, like, wind your way through all of that, being one of the first, at least Westerners, to kind of bring it to the West and uh, invite people like myself down to have these experiences. Um, and you know, as you're going through your training, is there? I know there's many memorable experiences, but just to kind of share for the audience, a one of your plant medicine journeys you did with Don Julio, that maybe before he said, "Okay, you have this title now." Was there any big experience that you had to train for and show that you could handle the space? And by what I mean by space, and maybe Hamilton, you can explain this better, is as leading these plant medicine ceremonies for other people, like you're kind of controlling the whole ceremony, both uh, internally as well as with the music. Excuse me, warding off negative energies. Um, so you're needing to learn how to control this. And you have usually, I think, 20 to 25 people in your ceremonies. Is that about right?
Yeah.
And so you have a big space and a lot of people you're responsible for as they're going through whatever they're going through.
I think the biggest night of all in that, you know, kind of line of thinking was a night when the test was for me to take over the ceremony for the first time and run it myself.
Oof.
So typically what happens is the maestros start the ceremony and they just continue and you try to keep up, which is its own difficulty. It's like going on a jog with someone who runs really fast. So, you try to just keep up along the way and you learn how to do that. And then one night we drink and, I had a fairly large dose. So I knew it would be very strong. And the maestros just stopped. They just stopped performing and they put down their shakapas and they sat there in silence and the ceremony continued and I needed to, support and help the others. And it was, clear that it was my opportunity to show that I could do that. And so
Mm,
I think inside the visionary space itself, it felt like minutes of silence that I had to figure out what to do. But I think in real time, it was probably a few seconds. You're like, wait, what are you guys doing? Oh, I have to do this now. So, that moment kind of shock, you feel your throat, lump in your throat. Like, what do I do? And then I, at that point, just, turned to the training that I had had and started to hold the ceremony. And with that, like you say, you start to guide the nature of the visions that everybody's having. You do it through the chants and percussion and music that you learn that are called ikaro, and you start to wrangle the ceremony. You start to steer it, and it's a beautiful thing. It was an amazing night, and at the end of that night, they told me to sit down in front of them, and they, bestowed on me new titles and kind of graduation from that experience.
Mm.
So it was a very powerful one, but that moment where they didn't prep me or tell me it was coming, they just did it. That was the shock in that moment, yeah.
No doubt. Like, oh boy, here we go.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and it is just amazing how the Icaros and the music and can guide the ceremony because uh, just from my various experiences, there's definitely times during the Icaro where you're like, oh God, will you please just stop this right now? It's too intense. I can't handle it anymore. And then, you'll stop and you'll have a break and you're like, ah, big release and relief. And thank God, I hope they don't start another one. And then sure enough, another one goes. And then that time it can be very different. And you're like, oh, this is amazing. So it's pretty amazing what they have figured out over these generations. And, I think it's also amazing and beautiful that while you learn some of these from your teachers, also some of these ikaros come to you while you're, you know, on a plant medicine journey. Is that correct?
Yeah, you get to learn your lineages, Icaros. There are some that are just, known across lineages. They've been shared across, large regions. Think of it very much like folk songs that are known all over.
Mm,
And then there are unique ones to your lineage, and you can learn those from the maestros that train you. But then you're also expected, as you learn to open up into the ceremonial space and the visionary space, to receive new ones. And it's
mm,
very different to that of writing songs. I've written music and, know the the songwriting process. It's not like that at all. It's you go into ceremony and all of a sudden there is this new musicality and this new tool that you have, and it comes whole, and you receive it, and then you can share it and express it. And as you said, it can in the nature of the vibration and what it's communicating in the room for people dramatically shift the nature of their experience. It can go from being very soothing and supportive and helpful to also being something that is, intense and intensifying to uh, induce purge or to help somebody release a certain kind of blockage. And while somebody goes through that process, uh, they really do experience in a very visceral and very felt way in themselves the power of that. And it's
hmm
a magnificent technology. I've always thought of it as a language and a technology. It's a magnificent technology that the indigenous people developed and wield here.
Yes, it is. And, it helps contribute to the overall healing for sure. And the uh the purge, just to touch on that quickly, just for those who may not be familiar with ayahuasca in particular, it's known for its purgative uh, uh, strength, and that could be from laughing or burping or sweating or crying, but it can also be a lot from vomiting as well as defecation. And you guys all take amazing steps to make sure everyone's safe in those and keep things clean, I will say.
Mhm.
um, so speaking of the healing and, you know, obviously your intention with everything you're doing is to help others heal and, you know, I would say find more love in their life for themselves, for others, all that sort of thing. But um, there might be a misperception or a hallucination, if you will, that, oh, plant medicine, it's all about love and joy and healing. But down in the jungle, that is not always the way it rolls. Like there are people using this medicine for less than good reasons, I would
Yeah.
say. And I don't know if maybe to speak to some of your experiences with that and what others might be using it for.
Well, I think plant medicines in general are a great amplifier of the
hmm
natures and tendencies within individuals. And some people use the plant medicines for the sake of healing medicines, and other people use the very same plants and they're more interested in their own spiritual practices or different forms of the accumulation of power or
Mm,
manipulation associated with it. And then, of course, you have to watch out for any unregulated space. There's a lot of charlatans and frauds. And so,
yes.
you're dealing with plants and a tea. Other people want to take advantage of the interest in that. And so there are some people with real nefarious intentions, and some are just negligent or, embroiled in some kind of fraud. And then there are those that obviously have really dedicated a huge percentage of their life to it, and they're there to help you and support you in your own transformational or healing processes. So just want to watch out for it, understand that that's common, I think, across the world.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's a common misconception. People would like to uh, anthropomorphize the plants often. They speak about them in a very human-like way. I don't like to do that. I think of them very much as just plants. They are very intelligent, as all the lineages describe them as a great teacher for the people who interact with it and have had the ceremonial experience. Most people come out of it saying like they felt like this was not the same thing as taking a drug or alcohol or like a pill kind of medicine. There's some other shift or state of mind that changes that allows for a greater awareness and communication to take place. These are all common elements that get expressed. And to understand that as a great amplifier, if you want to healing and you want real medicine from it, go find real medicine people who, are trained in that and share that. Look at the outcomes of the people that have worked with them. And if they have positive outcomes and stories to say, and if you kind of connect the dots and line it all up, you'll know that you're with a reputable person.
Um, so condensing that down, I think not just, oh, I'm going to go to Peru and on the spur of the moment, some guy offered me ayahuasca. Let's drink with him. Like it's definitely doing your research is important, for your own safety. And as you said, to make sure it's not a charlatan that you're dealing with, make sure that they have many years of experience, many years of training. They have people helping them with the ceremony. That it's not just one person that can lead to bad things. Um, are there any other questions you would ask or have people ask that's important?
I think there's sort of a general checklist to go down. The first
Mhm.
thing is find a reputable place. You're going to a foreign country to have a traditional experience there. Make sure that it's set up for you. So I think going to a place that is organized around it is really important. The second element of it is, again, know that they have a good reputation. All of the centers that have, uh, you know, solid track record are online, and so you can contact them and learn about the work that they do. Check the outcomes that they have. What is it like for people who go through their experiences? And if you want to see if there are people that you can contact that have had the experience or reputable people, but also vouch for them. And I think it's really important to ask if they're willing to adjust the dose of the plant medicine for you,
Mm,
because there's a wide variety of sensitivities to these plants. And so it's not a one size fits all solution around dose. And some centers just have a traditional dose that for a lot of people, they come out of those ceremonies saying it's too much. And so I think it's important that the practitioners are willing to adjust dose for your needs. And so I would ask if they do that. And I would ask what kind of safety protocols they have in place,
mhm.
just simply because you're, going into a significant altered state. You know that going in, and you just want to know that they've thought through your own safety and well-being. Like, out here in the forest, for instance, like is where you're going. Do they have anti-venom just in case? We have it. We've never needed it.
Right.
You have it. Do they have a safety vehicle if there's any reason to, get you out? We did have a situation once where a woman who was allergic to bee sting was stung by a wasp.
Mm,
Very common to be stung by a bee or a wasp, especially in nature. And, so we had a vehicle to be able to get her to a hospital and get the treatment that she needed. So just have the people organizing this thought through the safety needs. Are they licensed? Are they reputable organization? And if they are, and you have a good vibe with them, you have a really good chance of having a positive outcome.
Yeah, yeah, and speaking to that, when I went back down to Blue Morpho in 2018, this isn't in my book, so I'll talk about that a little bit, but, there was one gentleman there who had came from Israel, had been in the army, and just when you walked in, you just felt the heaviness and trauma and darkness that was within him, and he had a very intense ceremony to the point where he was really starting to physically, like, move a lot and be a danger to himself and others, and there were a group of the people leading the ceremony, like, were trying to, like, hold him down, and he was, like, a small skinnier than me probably, and he was, like, lifting 3 or 4 people off the ground to the
Mm.
point where, you guys, again, safety precaution, had a backboard that you strapped him to, which sounds extreme and intense, but again, it's keeping himself safe as well as everyone else. And the next day, he was like, that was the most meaningful healing experience of my life. And he was just a whole new person. Like the darkness had lifted, and it was an incredible thing to witness. But again, it just speaks to the safety and making sure that whoever you're doing this with has thought all these things through.
Yeah, and from the outside, it's very difficult to understand the experience someone's having in vision based on the way
Hmm.
that they're behaving. You can have people that are completely quiet and not moving at all, and you find out that inside vision, they're having a very difficult experience. Often, when people are having a strong physical experience inside their visionary experience, they're okay. They're just having a very extended, very spiritual, strong kind of connection, and they're usually working something out of them. And, that can produce at different times strong physical response. And so we have protocols of how to handle it to make sure someone doesn't harm themselves.
Yeah.
Sometimes people are not aware of their physicality and they're just hitting their hand on the floor, or
Mm,
their foot or ankle on the floor and they can bruise themselves. So, there's ways to understand escalation of that. These are all the things you want to know from a center working with you, that they understand how to help you through any and all of the kinds of ceremonial experiences that people can have.
yeah, for sure. And yeah, he was actually having both because I believe, if I remember correctly, he was having these beings that were not, I mean, I don't know if you want to call them demons or what, but not nice looking beings, like basically like performing surgery on him and taking out all of this darkness that was with him. So he was having both physical and vision, intense visions, but it happens. I want to loop back though. You kind of near the top, you're saying how the training has really connected you with nature and obviously the plants. So I'm wondering, like, after all these journeys you've had, which is probably thousands, I'm sure, at this point, and that's a lot of ayahuasca. Like I've drank maybe 11 times, and I feel like, well, that's a lot. So to drink thousands of times is amazing. But what insights have you come out the others at this point? And not that there couldn't be more. What insights have you come through with from all your journeys about the nature of reality as well as humans' place in nature?
I think the most important understanding that has come from all of that is that each human being is truly unique to themselves. And we like to categorize and group each other and think about ourselves based on gender and, all different ways that we've built this identity, but that really there's no duplicate of you, and that that's quite a miraculous phenomenon,
Mm.
and that you find yourself in nature and that we have nature. So even though we've abstracted our lives off into living in urban environments or, suburban environments, you still are of nature. There's a biological nature to you, there's a physical nature to you, and your nature fits within nature. You're not out of
Mm.
place. You're not out of place at all in this world. We've, built this really, for me, impressive, incredible layer of infrastructure within nature. but this
Hmm.
nature that is within you is powerful and strong. It's guiding. It's not by accident, and within it, you are truly unique. And I find that to be just a beautiful phenomena.
Mm. Definitely a miracle for sure. Yeah, and I definitely, from my uses of various plant medicines, like the connection to nature and the earth just deepens every time. It just, it's undeniable that, as you said, even though we are our own individual beings, we are all connected to it and to each other, really, in that way.
Mm, we are nature, we're made of the earth itself. It's an incredible thing to think of. And we still, even in the immensity of the science that we've created, don't have full understanding of either our own bodies. We're gaining more understanding every day, but we still don't have full understanding of ourselves. And we certainly don't have a lot of understanding about the greater mysteries of this universe. There's a lot of theory about the universe and very little facts that we've discovered that hold over time. And so that's an ample playing field to find ourselves in and continue that curiosity that we have to continue to explore more and try to discover more about ourselves and our place in this universe.
Mm. Is there any understanding you thought you had of the universe before you started working with ayahuasca that has shifted and changed in the time since?
I think when I started, I was, very aware of what I perceive now as the illusion of separation,
Mm,
and that it seemed like the earth was big and there was a lot of distance separating all of us. And now I think of the earth as actually being pretty small, and we're all connected in one form or another. And it's, I think, the earth that connects us. Like, I'm not
mm,
debating that there's distance between us, or,
right.
people live throughout the whole earth, but by the very nature of the fact that we're all living here together at the same time, we're all alive right now in the universe. We're the only human beings alive right now. Most of the human beings that ever existed are actually deceased. They are our ancestors. It's quite a phenomena that we get this opportunity to be alive, have our lives, and I think it's also phenomenal that we've extended the duration of our lives so that we live this
Mhm.
very full life. Most of our ancestors died before the age of 20. And so for us to, be considered middle age in our 40s, that's just middle age is an incredible, you know, testament to the way we've learned how to live. And I just see that, we're a lot more connected than we think.
Absolutely, and I think that just speaks to despite before we started the actual recording here, we were talking just briefly about sort of the, challenging macro things going on in the world, that despite all that and how hard that can be to, witness and try and deal with it, there's still a lot to be grateful for, um, in that each of us has this beating heart and we're breathing and, being able to even be here, as you've said. Um, with that said, when I first went down in 2006, you were just dealing with, ayahuasca, and I don't know when you also started to work with wachuma as well, but, it was definitely an option when I went back down in 2018. I'm wondering, wachuma, also known as San Pedro, it's a cactus, um, different experience than ayahuasca. What brought you to work with wachuma, and why would someone choose ayahuasca over wachuma, or one versus the other? I mean, I know they can work together, but if you only had to, if there's a choice of one versus the other, what are its purposes?
Yeah, my history with Wachuma goes back to seeking my apprenticeship, and
Mm,
the first plant medicine I ever worked with was Wachuma.
yeah.
And so it was profound and led me to ayahuasca. And when I went into my ayahuasca training, there was a period of time where I was expected to only work with the plant medicines here from the forest. And so I
Mm.
just put San Pedro or Wachuma aside for a period of time when I went through that training. And then as soon as I, was sort of opened up or allowed to work with other kinds of plant medicines again, I did. And so I was very interested in wachuma, psilocybin mushrooms, cannabis, and the less psychoactive ones, kava kava, and
Mhm.
many of the plant medicine supplements that are available. I wanted to understand them from the perspectives that I had gained from ayahuasca. So I had one perspective before training and another perspective after. And through that time, I just, really rekindled my deep love for Wachuma San Pedro. It's a phenomenal experience. It's very different to ayahuasca. I don't even think you can compare them. They are both altered states, but San Pedro is very gentle. It takes a long time to build up in intensity and strength. So
Mhm.
hours and hours. It's an all day or all night experience. We like to do it during the day. So you start in the morning and you end in the evening time. And it's very grounding, healing, integrative, helps people really recognize what we were discussing and talking about nature, feeling this inherent connection turned back on. Most people say that the colors are more vibrant. There's an awareness of the life force, not just an objectification of what they're seeing, but actually a real
Mhm.
awareness and connection with the nature around them. Most people say that they have a much deeper awareness and understanding of Mother Earth, like the concept of the earth being alive in its own right, and feeling that and feeling like there's direct communication associated with that. And then there's a healing process that takes place that is very heart-centered and supports people in just healing in a very profound and deep way. And you know they can go in with real trauma and real pain and suffering that they're carrying and come out of it on the other side having just felt like that they had released that and transcended or transformed it. And so I
Mhm.
think it's a very powerful medicine for those reasons. And now more than ever, I like to work with it as a form of helping to integrate ayahuasca.
Mhm.
So on our retreats now, we hold 3 ayahuasca ceremonies and a San Pedro ceremony at the end of the retreat. And the San Pedro ceremony is just a great way to process in a day, in a ceremonial state of consciousness, everything that's happened in the ayahuasca ceremonies and to get more out of uh, those experiences. And so I just find it to be a beautiful medicine, and I am enjoying seeing it, become once again more popular in the awareness of people and that there's more desire to try it.
Yeah. Yeah. It is a beautiful heart-opening medicine, and one other thing that I appreciate about San Pedro is just that it grows really easily.
Mhm.
So, whereas, some other medicines like ayahuasca or, peyote might be having, it's a hard line because it's getting more popular, yet it's getting used up and trying to, like, not totally decimate it, right? Whereas wachuma, man, that stuff it's a beast in its own way of continuing to grow and grow and grow.
It loves to grow, and it's very available for sacred cultivation, and it's
Yeah.
happening. There are, people who understand that there will be a growing need and desire for these experiences long term, and they're able to plant, you know, hundreds, thousands of acres of it, and it will grow
Mhm.
and continue to grow, and it's renewable. You can harvest it, and the roots still, bring out new branches, and so this is truly a renewable resource. And I agree with you. It's a beautiful plant to propagate in that way.
See here, I want to respect your time. We have about, 10 or 12 minutes here to go. And I have a couple last, kind of speed questions at the end we can get to. But I'm wondering right now, like, from all these ceremonies you've done, from all these experiences you've had, from all the knowledge you've gained and wisdom from the plants, is there anything you've learned about loss through all of this that might, you know, be insightful to people listening?
The universe and the world is always impermanent.
Mm.
Everything about it is, yet it's always whole. It's always ever changing. And so, uh, loss is inherent to the living process. I had a great friend just a few weeks ago transcend. We had
Mm,
a one of our, beautiful puppies who's 9 years old, was ill and also transcended last week, and so this is a continuation of a process, and I look at the forest behind me, and the forest grows out of itself. So the forest is constantly falling to the floor, and it's constantly decomposing and growing itself anew. And so this idea of loss is inherent to life, and we have to address it with openness and heart and a tremendous amount of love and acceptance.
mhm.
And I've also learned that, when we quote lose loved ones, it's not that they're gone, it's that there's change of state. I know it's very
Right.
hard for others to understand if they don't have the ceremonial experiences, but in ceremonial vision, people transition from being alive to being of spirit and or being of soul and it's just very common. It's hard to believe, but it's very common that people come to ceremony and say that they were with loved ones that had
Mhm.
transitioned or passed on. So this is just a very common set of experiences, and I think that that's hard for us to understand, but we must accept that there is a much greater context for us in the world that I like to think of as eternal. And I find great solace in the form of loss and understanding that there's an eternal nature to us that we want to fully embrace and accept. And it helps me when I, address the deep emotional processes associated with this ever changing impermanence.
Yes. Yes, and I when I was down there in 2018, I lost my father, like, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, and yeah, I mean, he came, he visited. I've since had grandparents as well, the same thing, and, people who haven't had the experience might think, "Oh, again, that's just a hallucination, quote, unquote, and it's not real," but even I mean, again, feels as real as me talking to you, and even if it wasn't real, it was still healing, and it was still a beautiful experience, and something I would never, ever trade, and, like, I'm getting just choked up about it now because it was so deep and meaningful no matter what the reality of it was.
That's like, starting out, we said that visions are important not because you're comparing them to physical reality, but because they were impactful for us.
Mhm.
And no one will ever be able to parse out, you know, a greater context for that vision other than you. And I actually like that about the visionary experience. People come away having had an experience for them that was uniquely impactful, transformative, and in most cases healing. And it's an important element and aspect of it. And it directly relates to how we relate to loss. One of my greatest just concerns and critiques of the society that I grew up in Silicon Valley, was that for as being as technologically advanced as it was, it had no support network for death.
Mm.
It just didn't exist when I was growing up. No one wanted to talk about it, no one wanted to deal with it, no one wanted to address it, and it was inevitable as a phenomena of being alive. And so when I
Yeah.
came down here, I really appreciated that the people just accepted in a very deep way the notion that life comes to this transition moment and that there is a way to process those feelings. There is a true way to grieve that doesn't create a greater experience of separation, but actually makes us feel more connected.
Mhm.
And I find that that provides great solace.
Mm. Absolutely. Yeah, I could not agree more. And I also just love the whole metaphor of the forest decomposing and regrowing, and in some way it is a metaphor for what we go through, I feel. But before we get to the little speed questions, what is Blue Morpho up to this year that you're excited about, that people should know about?
Wow, Blue Morpho is exciting this year. I feel like this is the year that we've been growing towards for a long time. We have retreats down here at our lodge, and we also have retreats in the Sacred Valley. Our lineage is growing. We have students and practitioners and participants in our lineage. And with the new changing laws in Colorado, there's opportunity to also experience ceremony in Colorado, which is a fascinating
Mm.
turn of events as things continue to shift and evolve. So, being here at our own lodge, which I got to build in 2005, 2006 with my own hands, is a just an honor and a love to get to be here. And then we have these beautiful retreats in the Sacred Valley, in the Andes, in the mountains, both San Pedro retreats there in the home of San Pedro, as well as ayahuasca. And then I've been involved in technology-based projects, and this year they're going to launch, and so I'm
Mm.
excited.
Wow. And is Blue Morpho dot retreat the best place to find all this? Or
BlueMorpho.org. Yeah, to come to
.org?
BlueMorpho.org. And we're accessible. Even though we're here in the Amazon, we're accessible via email and through Telegram and other chat apps and stuff. And we'd love to interact with you and get to know you if you're interested in coming down and having the experience.
Amazing. And obviously, this is the furthest distance I've done a podcast here. So thanks to technology for allowing this to happen when you're in the middle of the jungle. And I'm here in California. So amazing. Um, so three questions, relatively quick. Hopefully, we'll see. I don't know. The first one can get bigger than that, but I guess I'm wondering, what is a vision you've had in the last, let's say, year or two that has taught you something, and what was it?
Vision I had in the last year that taught me something was really about the advancements in our technology and in around artificial intelligence.
Mm,
And I had visions about a year ago that there would be a great desire to move artificial intelligence into space.
hmm,
And just now there's a talk about XAI merging with SpaceX to make that possible,
right.
and Google's talking about it. And so that was a great vision to see this a direction that, our technology is moving. And um, what it taught me was that we're evolving and moving faster as a collective than we ever have in history. And that, what would have taken decades now takes years, and things that took years now take days. And so this is a vibrant, incredible time in life to be alive. There's a lot of negative narrative going on in the world that we don't know how true all of that is. And so this is really a time to be centered in our awareness, follow what's going on in the world, pay attention, and
Mm,
do our very best, regardless of what anyone else is doing.
mm. Well, and to hopefully, I would say, have a say in where, make sure it goes to the positive and not the negative.
Absolutely.
Uh, Second question: what is something you have lost in the last year? And this could be good or bad.
Kind of a neat question. I feel like I, I feel like in the last year, I've lost a internal weight of life, not a physical weight, not like losing weight like
Mm,
on a diet, but
yeah.
like releasing a kind of weight of just life itself, and life feels lighter and more joyous and more beautiful, and I'm glad to have lost that. And I've also lost loved ones in this last year, but
Mm,
I've enjoyed seeing them in ceremony. I've
yeah,
enjoyed
yeah.
seeing them
Can you?
transcendent of their own illnesses.
Mm, that's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you speak to more of like losing that weight, like maybe how that happened or what exactly you mean by that weight?
Sure, I think that a lot of people experience just a weight to life, like, sometimes life
Mm,
feels heavy. Sometimes
yeah.
life just feels like they're carrying a lot of responsibility. Sometimes it seems like the path ahead is obscured and you're trying to find your way. Sometimes it
Mm,
feels like there's a heaviness to just the amount of conflict in general, either in your own personal life or in the your connection with the greater collective. And so for me, it was just a personal accumulation over years of responsibility, and just
mm,
I asked for that to be transcended through ceremony and spiritual practice, and I feel like that has occurred in a way that's just very beautiful.
Mm, I love that. And I also love just how it speaks to, even though you're this uh, shaman, medico vegetalista, that, people might have this idea like, oh, your life is just lovely and perfect. But, you still have this heaviness and responsibilities. And, the plant medicine has helped you with that. So just wanted to call that out and reflect that to the listeners. Um, Last but not least, third question. What are you loving right now?
Oh, there's so much I love right now. I love love.
Mm.
I love love and I love life and I love existence and I love many people that are close in my life. And
Mm.
I love our animals. I love our we have a lot of dogs. I love our dogs. I love taking them for walks. I love nature. I love creativity and imagination and purpose
Mm.
and feeling on mission. And I love the opportunity to just have any other second to life itself. I think this is a
Mm.
miraculous thing. So there's just so much to love.
Well, I love that as an ending point to end on the miracle of life and the love that is within it and the love we should carry for it. So, Hamilton, this has been an awesome hour, and as I said earlier, look forward to having you back on once the memoir's out, and maybe I'll see you back down there in the jungle.
It'd be amazing. Thanks so much. It was a pleasure speaking with you today.
All right, thanks, Hamilton. Thanks again to all of you listening out there. And remember, if you're interested in learning more about plant medicine for yourself or perhaps becoming a sitter of some sort, check out Hamilton's plant medicine training course that he is currently offering for $1,000 off to all you listeners. And again, I will put that link in the show notes as well. Next week, I'll be bringing you a conversation I just had with Lauren Carroll. Lauren is the co-founder of Lamort. She is a death doula and educator, holistic funeral director, and plant medicine facilitator. I know that sounds like, oh God, that's going to be heavy, but crazily enough, I had an amazing sense of joy by the time our conversation was over. So tune in. It's a great one. Don't miss it. And in the meantime, if you're liking all this, share it, comment on it, let me know what you're thinking, what you like and don't like, and all those things. So till next time, this is Scott Schumaker with Love, Loss, and Hallucinations.